Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 21, First Year 12. Third Person POV. Ninja Academy, Konoha, Year 32. Suna Senju vs Makoto Uchiha. Please enter the ring. One of the examiners took the paper and asked the girls to step into the circle under everyone's watchful eyes for the first fight. The atmosphere in the Konoha Academy was electrifying. The chatter stopped, and all eyes were fixed on the central ring. It was the moment many had been eagerly awaiting, the fight between Suna Senju and Makoto Uchiha. Two young kunoichis, both with powerful heritages and promising futures, were about to face off. After the Chunin called their names, the two girls stood up. Suna, with her confident and determined posture, walked to the ring displaying the characteristic strength of the Senju clan. Her fists were clenched, ready to defeat her year-long rival. Makoto, on the other hand, displayed an almost disconcerting calm, a serenity that hid the agility and precision the Uchiha family was known for. As soon as they faced each other, the examiner started the fight. Begin, announced the referee. Suna advanced first, her movements powerful and direct. She sought to close the distance quickly, aware that her strength was her greatest advantage. With each step, she tried to impose her presence, as if to say that the legacy of the first Hokage ran in her veins. Makoto, however, was not intimidated. She danced around Suna, her movements fluid and graceful, a battle dance that confused and frustrated her opponent. With each of Suna's thrusts, Makoto glided to the side with the elegance of a leaf in the wind. Her agility was her weapon, and she used it masterfully. Suna's strikes were strong, each one loaded with the intention to end the fight. But Makoto was always a step ahead, anticipating and avoiding, her mind as quick as her feet. But Suna's patience was not infinite, and with each of Makoto's dodges, her frustration grew. "You are not Minato, you can't run forever," Suna shouted, launching an even more fierce attack. "I don't intend to," replied Makoto, her calm voice contrasting with the intensity of the fight. And then, in a move that surprised all who were watching, Makoto stopped retreating. Instead, she advanced, meeting Suna's strength with her own speed and precision. It was a clash of styles, a collision of legacies. The two kunoichis clashed in the center of the ring, the sound of their blows echoing like little thunders. Suna, with her brute strength, delivered powerful blows that promised to end the fight with a single hit. On the other hand, Makoto, with her feline agility, dodged and counterattacked with precise and quick strikes, aiming to unbalance her opponent. The fight was tied, each one exploring the weaknesses and resisting the strengths of the other. Suna launched a powerful punch that Makoto dodged at the last second, responding with an agile kick that Suna barely managed to block. The spectators were on the edge of their seats, amazed at the skill and determination of the young children. "This won't be easy," Suna whispered, panting, but with a glint of challenge in her eyes. "I expected no less from you," Makoto replied, equally panting, but smiling. "But I am not going to lose." They stepped back and, almost as if they had agreed, charged at each other with everything they had. Suna with a determined yell, Makoto with concentrated silence. Their fists were on the way to a clash that would decide the fight. However, at the last moment, both attempted a risky maneuver. Suna used her strength to try to throw Makoto out of the ring, while Makoto used her agility to try to dodge and counterattack. The result was unexpected, both lost their balance and fell out of the ring almost at the same time. The referee looked surprised, trying to determine who had fallen first, but it was impossible. The onlookers exchanged glances and nodded to each other. "Technical draw," announced the referee, raising his hands to signal the outcome. The audience burst into applause. Some were disappointed not to have a clear winner, but most were thrilled by the skill and fighting spirit the two girls had shown. Suna and Makoto got up, both a bit surprised but satisfied with the outcome. they exchanged a look of mutual respect. "Good fight," said Tsuna, extending her hand. "You too," replied Mikoto, shaking Tsuna's hand. "But next year, I will win," Tsuna declared. "We'll see about that." Mikoto responded with a hint of arrogance. As Tsuna and Mikoto left the ring, the buzz of the crowd was still alive with comments and discussions about the fight they had just witnessed. The examiner, a man with a firm posture and attentive gaze, called the audience's attention back to the present with his clear and authoritative voice. "The next fight will be between Shikaku Nara and Inoichi Yamanaka. Please, enter the ring." The conversations quieted down, and all eyes turned back to the fighting area. Shikaku, known for his intelligence and tendency toward laziness, slowly rose from his place. He yawned openly, showing an apparent lack of interest, but his eyes were sharp and observant. Inoichi, on the other hand, stood up with an energy and enthusiasm that strongly contrasted with Shikaku's relaxed attitude. He was known for his ambition and desire to learn more and more. Both boys positioned themselves, Shikaku with his hands in his pockets, a casual posture that some might interpret as disinterest, but those who knew him understood it was just his way of being ready for anything. Inoichi, more upright and focused, analyzed his opponent, trying to anticipate the moves and strategies he might employ. "Begin," announced the referee, and the fight started. Shikaku was the first to act, moving with a laziness that belied his intent, trying to corner Inoichi with a move that seemed casual but was calculated. Inoichi, however, was not easily fooled. He responded with a series of maneuvers aiming to unbalance Shikaku. It was a cat-and-mouse game, each trying to anticipate and counter the other's moves. As the fight between young Shikaku and Inoichi unfolded, it was clear that, despite their young age, both had a remarkable understanding of tactics and strategies. Shikaku, with his casual posture and hands in his pockets, advanced with a calculated slowness, each step a test for Inoichi's defenses. Inoichi, energetic and focused, responded with quick and decisive movements, trying to find a gap in Shikaku's seemingly relaxed defense. The fight continued, each boy anticipating and reacting to the other's moves. Shikaku, with his sharp intelligence, made lazy moves that concealed his true intention of cornering Inoichi. Inoichi, in turn, used his energy and enthusiasm to keep Shikaku moving, seeking to tire him out and create an opportunity for a decisive blow. As they progressed, fatigue began to show. Shikaku, realizing that Inoichi's energy and vigor might overcome his strategy of patience, began to reconsider his plan. Inoichi, sensing Shikaku's hesitation, pressed even harder, his eyes shining with the prospect of an imminent victory. Finally, after an intense cat-and-mouse game, Shikaku found himself cornered, Inoichi's cunning and relentless energy prevailing. With a sigh of resignation and a smile acknowledging his friend's skill, Shikaku stepped back and admitted defeat. "You won, Inoichi," he said. "I won." Inoichi cheerfully celebrated, and many spectators clapped for him. "The next fight will be between Choza Akimichi and Hayashi Hyuga. Please, enter the ring." The crowd stirred with renewed anticipation. First, Choza Akimichi made his entrance, his imposing and confident figure immediately capturing everyone's attention. Known for incredible physical strength and abilities that represent the tradition of his clan, he walked with an air of determination and serenity, ready to face his opponent. Next, Hayashi Hyuga entered the ring with calm grace and piercing eyes. His posture and sharp gaze reflected his dexterity and the perfect control he possessed over his abilities. Representing the prestigious Hyuga clan, he emanated a silent confidence and an aura of intensity that promised a memorable fight. As the two ninjas positioned themselves face to face, the anticipation was palpable. Choza with his brute strength and Hayashi with his lethal precision, both at the age of 6, were ready to prove their abilities and honor their clans. The examiner stepped back, and silence took over the arena. All eyes were fixed on the center, waiting for the start of a fight that promised to be an incredible display of power and technique. As the examiner retreated, a tense silence fell over the arena. Choza and Hayashi, despite being only 6 years old, faced each other with the seriousness of seasoned veterans. Choza, with his size and impressive strength, even for his age, took the initiative, advancing with firm and determined steps towards Hayashi. Hayashi, in turn, remained motionless, his penetrating eyes watching every move of Choza. As Choza was about to reach him, Hayashi dodged with agility, his lightness contrasting with Choza's brute force. The crowd watched, fascinated by the dexterity and speed of the young Hyuga, who dodged Choza's advances with surprising grace. Choza, undiscouraged, attempted several times to hit Hayashi with quick and powerful blows, each capable of changing the course of the fight if connected. But Hayashi, with an almost supernatural perception, anticipated and avoided each attack, his calm expression never wavering. Then, in a defining moment of the fight, Hayashi did something extraordinary. With a focused look and deep breath, he activated his Byakugan, a feat rarely seen in someone his age that left everyone stunned. His eyes took on a new intensity, the veins around them becoming visible as he looked directly at Choza. With the Byakugan activated, Hayashi clearly saw Choza's chakra points, predicting his movements with even more precision. He began to counterattack, each move calculated to avoid direct contact while targeting points that would reduce Choza's strength and mobility. The young Akimichi felt the pressure, his attacks becoming more desperate as he struggled to keep up with the precision and agility of his opponent. Finally, with a quick and precise move, Hayashi struck a crucial point, causing Choza to stagger and fall to his knees. The silence was deafening as everyone absorbed what had just happened. Hayashi, with his Byakugan still active, offered Choza a look of respect and a hand to help him stand. Choza accepted the help, his face showing a mix of disappointment and admiration. The examiner announced Hayashi as the winner, and the crowd erupted in applause and exclamations. Despite his young age, Hayashi Hyuga had demonstrated remarkable skill and the promise of becoming an exceptional shinobi, bringing honor and prestige to his clan as a member of the main family. Chapter 22, First Year 13. Third-Person POV. Ninja Academy, Konoha, Year 32. As the previous battle reached its impressive conclusion, the arena was filled with murmurs and exclamations. Incredible! Byakugan at this age, a voice stood out among the spectators, clearly amazed by Hayashi's early ability. Admiration was palpable, surprise and respect mingling in the words echoing through the space. A jonin, with an assessing and experienced gaze, nodded in agreement, adding his voice to the conversation. The future of the Hyuga clan looks promising with a young one like this, he stated, his words conveying not only an assessment of Hayashi's potential but also a prediction of what his growth could mean for the clan. Around the arena, various members of the Hyuga clan, with their characteristic eyes and dignified postures, nodded in approval. Looks of satisfaction and a hint of pride adorned their faces as they considered Hayashi not only as a talented young individual but also as a future leader, someone who could one day stand out as a patriarch of the clan, especially considering his direct lineage from the main branch. Even the Hokage, observing from his honored position, expressed his acknowledgement. A promising young one, indeed, he murmured, a slight smile outlining his words. His confirmation served as a seal of high expectations and belief in Hayashi's potential. As this exchange took place, the focus began to shift to the next battle. Now, step forward, Ibiki Marino of the Marino clan versus Kaito Aburame of the Aburame clan. Competitors, please enter the ring, the examiner called, his voice clear, bringing the attention back to the present. Ibiki made his entrance with fierce determination, his expression serious and focused, an image of determination and the ambition of a future jonin. His eyes swept the arena, every detail, every shadow and light, analyzed as possible advantages in his imminent battle. Anticipation grew among the spectators, all feeling the tension and promise of another memorable fight. Shortly after, Kaito Aburame entered, his presence almost enigmatic with the characteristic hood of his clan covering most of his face. The aura of mystery surrounding him became more palpable with the subtle, almost imperceptible buzz of the insects that formed the basis of his techniques. He stood before Ibiki, the confrontation of their gazes promising an intriguing battle. The examiner stepped back, and the arena fell silent, all eyes fixed on the two young shinobi. Begin, he ordered. The fight began almost instantly. Ibiki advanced, his movements quick and decisive, but Kaito remained still, a subtle signal from his hand releasing his insects. In the blink of an eye, a swarm of them enveloped Ibiki, disorienting him and obscuring his vision. Ibiki struggled to fend them off, but with each move, Kaito controlled the insects with precision, anticipating and countering every attempt by Ibiki to break free. And then, as quickly as it began, it ended. With one final coordinated move, Kaito's insects struck key points, causing Ibiki to yield. The examiner quickly announced Kaito as the winner, and the crowd, still processing the speed and effectiveness of the fight, erupted in applause and exclamations. "Let's continue," the examiner began, his voice projecting clearly throughout the arena. "Next up, Hisashi Hyuga and Arata Sarutobi, step forward." Shortly after, Arata Sarutobi made his entrance. With a confident demeanor and a gaze reflecting the fiery ambition of his clan, he walked to the center of the ring, acknowledging Hisashi with a respectful nod. The examiner took a step back. "Begin," he declared, and immediately, the battle commenced. Hisashi advanced first, his swift and precise strikes a demonstration of his skill and intense training. Arata, however, was prepared. He skillfully dodged, his agility allowing him to stay out of Hisashi's reach. With each move, Arata observed, learned, and adapted, a quality inherent to the Sarutobi clan. As the fight progressed, Arata began to take the initiative. With agile maneuvers and smart use of his surroundings, he started to put pressure on Hisashi, who, without the Byakugan, struggled to anticipate and react to the fast and varied attacks. Finally, at a decisive moment, Arata executed a series of moves that unbalanced Hisashi, followed by a final strike that brought him down. Silence fell for a brief moment before the examiner announced Arata Sarutobi as the winner. The crowd applauded. "Hokage-sama, your clan has a great talent," defeating a Hyuga, a Jonin spoke to the Hokage. While many members of the Hyuga clan looked grim, others congratulated the Sarutobi clan. The examiner appeared with the next matchup. He proclaimed, "Guren Uchiha vs. Ryohei Inazuka. Enter the ring." Guren Uchiha entered first, his small stature not diminishing the aura of determination surrounding him. Even at just 6 years old and without the Sharingan, his confidence and training were evident. His eyes carefully watched the ring, calculating every possible move as he walked with a seriousness that defied his age. Next, Ryohei Inazuka advanced with palpable energy and enthusiasm. Without a canine companion by his side, he relied on his own innate fierceness and agility. His expression was fierce, a reflection of his clan's combative nature, and he bounded back and forth, barely containing his youthful fervor. The examiner stepped back, and silence filled the arena. "Begin," he ordered. Ryohei was the first to act, advancing toward Guren with a series of fast and unpredictable movements. His actions were wild and instinctive, attempting to disorient Guren with his speed and energy. Guren, on the other hand, remained calm. He watched, learned, and adapted to each of Ryohei's moves. With careful and precise steps, he dodged the attacks, using his intelligence and training to anticipate where Ryohei would be next. Each defense and counterattack by Guren was a demonstration of his innate ability and the training he had received from his clan. The fight continued, a test of agility and strategy. Ryohei pressed on with all the fury and energy of his youth, but Guren responded with a calmness and technique that were almost surprising for someone so young. And then, in a decisive move, Guren managed to dodge a particularly fast attack from Ryohei and lightly touched him on the shoulder, a symbolic but clear gesture, causing his opponent to fall out of the ring. The examiner announced the end of the fight, declaring Guren Uchiha the winner. The crowd applauded, impressed by the young Uchiha's skill and composure. "Sumin Izuka and Haruto Kurama, please step into the ring." Sumin Izuka was the first to enter, her energy and determination radiating throughout the ring. She didn't yet have her canine companion, but the tenacity and inherent fierceness of her clan were evident in her posture and fierce eyes. She bounded back and forth, clearly eager to begin. Shortly after, Haruto Kurama entered calmly, his presence almost ethereal in contrast to Tsume's vibrant energy. His clan is known for their genjutsu ability and creative nature. Haruto walked with serene confidence, his intelligent and observant eyes analyzing the ring and his opponent. The examiner took a step back and gave the signal. "Begin." Tsume wasted no time, immediately advancing toward Haruto with impressive speed. Her movements were fast and direct, each one reflecting intense training and her clan's fierce nature. Haruto, on the other hand, remained calm and focused. He began to execute moves to slow down his opponent. But she was too fast, as she had been trained by her clan in the arts of genjutsu, and the agility of the girl from the Inazuka clan was faster than he could anticipate. The fight turned into a game of cat and mouse, with Tsum trying to overcome Haruto's defenses and Haruto attempting to create an opening with his physical abilities. With a combination of agility, instinct, and an impressive understanding of Haruto's tactics, he managed to get close enough to strike Haruto, signaling the end of the fight. The examiner announced Tsum Inuzuka as the winner, and the crowd erupted in applause. As Tsum and Haruto left the ring, the atmosphere of excitement and anticipation did not diminish. There were more than a dozen fights left among all 36 students in Class A who hadn't fought yet. As the day progressed, the arena witnessed a variety of exciting matchups. Each fight revealed a new layer of skill and spirit in the young competitors. Some duels were quick and decisive, while others were long and tactical, but all showcased their talents for their respective clans. The techniques varied greatly. Some competitors relied on speed and agility, others on strength and endurance. Some showed promise in advanced tactical skills, while others surprised with creative and unexpected moves. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the arena, the tournament was approaching its climax. The crowd, though tired from the children's long sequence of fights, grew in excitement and noise. They knew that the event everyone had been waiting for was about to happen. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced the examiner, his voice rising above the crowd. "We have reached the last fight of the day, a matchup that promises to be one of the most memorable of this tournament. On one side, we have the number 1 newcomer, Minato Namikaze, who has demonstrated resilience and growth throughout the year in most tests. On the other side, Akame Uchiha, a talented young one from one of our most powerful clans." A murmur of excitement ran through the crowd as Minato entered the ring. His expression was calm, but his eyes gleamed with fierce determination. He was not just a newcomer, he was a shinobi who was already beginning to stand out, even among his talented peers from various clans. Akame Uchiha entered with an almost majestic presence and an arrogant gaze. The expectation surrounding his abilities was high, and he carried that weight with quiet confidence. His eyes, though calm, reflected the intensity and fire of his clan. The examiner stepped back. "Let the final fight of this tournament begin," he declared. A tense silence fell over the arena, all eyes fixed on the two young individuals in the center of the ring. Chapter 23, First Year 14. Third-Person POV. Ninja Academy, Konoha, Year 32. As Minato and Akame, both only 6 years old and in what would be the final fight of their first year at the academy, entered the ring, the crowd was eager to see how both would perform. Minato, the number 1 rookie, had earned an enviable reputation among everyone in the past few months, although no one knew of his special and unique ability in this world. Akame, however, had an arrogant look plastered on his face. He was determined to defeat Minato and prove that he was the best in his class. He would not allow a nameless civilian to take the place he believed was his by right. The examiner, sensing the tension in the air, stepped back and declared, "Begin." Minato immediately took a fighting stance, his expression focused and his body agile. He was ready to demonstrate his skill and show why he was considered the number 1 rookie. His confidence was palpable, and the crowd knew they were about to witness something extraordinary. As the last and most anticipated fight of the day began, Akame Uchiha, representing one of the most respected and feared clans, did not hesitate. With fierce determination shining in his eyes, he advanced toward Minato with a speed and confidence that could only come from deep training and an unwavering belief in his abilities. Each of his steps was charged with clear intent, a promise that he would live up to his clan's legacy. The crowd watched, holding their breath, as Akame launched into a series of quick and precise attacks. But Minato proved to be a formidable opponent. Somehow, he anticipated and dodged Akame's attacks with a grace and precision that defied understanding. Spectators exchanged looks of surprise and admiration. "How can he do this?" ninjas around murmured among themselves, unable to understand how Minato could predict each of Akame's moves without the aid of a famous Jujutsu from some special clans. Curiosity and astonishment spread through the crowd like waves, all fascinated by Minato's apparent foresight of Akame's movements. The Hokage, with his calm expression, yet clearly impressed, watched every detail of the fight. Beside him, a jonin, unable to contain his curiosity, questioned, "Hokage-sama, can you tell how the boy is doing this?" The Hokage turned slowly, his gaze still fixed on the fight. "I am as surprised as everyone," he began, his voice reflecting his amazement and admiration. I heard that the boy might do something similar from his teachers, but seeing it in person is truly astonishing. The boy is predicting the attacks without even looking at his opponent. He seems to have an exceptional mastery of his perception and instincts, almost as if he could sense the young Uchiha's intentions before they materialize. Minato switched from defense to attack, pressing the Uchiha and making him retreat at that moment. As Minato dodged and counterattacked with a skill that defied logic, the confusion and fascination among the spectators grew. He's using that ability again. Suna spoke with crossed arms among the other children. It's like he has my clan's Sharingan. But it's strange, murmured Makoto Uchiha, her forehead furrowed in confusion each time she looked at Minato in the ring. She was not alone in her thoughts. Many around began to whisper comparisons, trying to understand the source of Minato's almost supernatural ability. While Akame launched a series of quick and precise attacks, Minato responded with agility and foresight, counterattacking the Uchiha and making him receive hits from Minato. Applause and exclamations of admiration echoed through the arena, the crowd vibrating with each fluid and precise movement of Minato. He was the favorite in this fight. However, Akame Uchiha refused to be overshadowed. Feeling the pressure of the fight and the need to respond to Minato's exceptional skill, he did something no one expected. With a burning determination and intense focus, he activated his Sharingan, a tomo standing out in his red eyes. A murmur of surprise immediately swept through the crowd, gazes fixing on Akame's intense and shining eyes. The Sharingan! Minato murmured, his eyes fixed on the determined visage of the young Uchiha before him. The recognition in his voice was mixed with a hint of surprise. See, civilian, this is the power of the Uchiha clan, the power that will defeat you. Akame exclaimed, his confidence inflated by the activation of his Sharingan. The determination in his voice and the glint in his eyes revealed a deep pride in his legacy and abilities. The crowd reacted with surprise and admiration. At just 6 years old, he activated the Sharingan? That's incredible, a spectator exclaimed, their voice laden with shock and admiration. Indeed, impressive for an Uchiha, as expected from this clan, commented the Hokage, a subtle acknowledgement in his voice. Though his words were calm, there was a certain gleam in his eyes. Meanwhile, among the members of the Uchiha clan, surprise was mixed with satisfaction. Many looked at Akame with newfound regard, while others, already aware of his potential, nodded with quiet pride, seeing in him a potential elite shinobi of the clan. With the Sharingan active, Akame now possessed supernatural vision. He began to read and anticipate Minato's movements with a precision that rivaled Minato's intuitive ability. The fight, once dominated by Minato's agility and foresight, now became a balanced clash of extraordinary skills. Spectators followed with wide eyes, the tension and excitement growing with each movement. Both young fighters were now on equal footing, each using their unique abilities to outdo the other, the blows and counterblows occurring at an impressive speed. Minato, feeling the pressure of Akame's Sharingan, murmured to himself, acknowledging his opponent's skill. My haki is even better than your Sharingan, but he has a far superior style of taijutsu than me. This is getting bad for me. I need to end the fight as quickly as possible. As he dodged a kick from Akame, his eyes sought an opening, a moment to reverse the tide of the battle that now balanced precariously on the edge of a thread. Each moment a testament to the talent and potential of two of the most promising young fighters of the year. As the battle between Minato and Akame intensified, the crowd watched, completely captivated. Akame moved with lethal precision, his red eyes tracking every movement of Minato, anticipating and responding with quick and accurate physical blows. Damn it! How can he compare to my Sharingan? Akame couldn't help but murmur in frustration as the fight continued to be balanced. Minato, in a spectacle of agility and grace, danced around Akame as if he were as light as air. His movements were a blur to the onlookers, fluid and unpredictable, each step and dodge so harmonious and calculated that it seemed part of a complex dance. Even in the face of the Sharingan's predictive power, Minato's ability to sense Akame's intentions and move accordingly, a mastery he called observation haki, allowed him to be always one step ahead. Akame, feeling the pressure to maintain his Sharingan active, which required a constant amount of chakra and focus, launched into a frenetic assault. Each of his attacks was quick and precise, a determined effort to corner and defeat Minato. But Minato, with a dexterity that defied belief, dodged each attack, his form gliding through the ring with the ease and grace of a leaf in the wind. Then, in a critical moment, Minato noticed the opening he had been waiting for. Akame, in his determination to end the fight and under the strain of maintaining his Sharingan, became slightly more predictable. Minato, with impressive agility, slid under a particularly aggressive blow. In a movement swift and lightning-fast, he kicked to the side of Akame's head, a non-lethal blow but sufficient to make the boy fall unconscious, ending the fight. The crowd, which had been held in collective suspense, erupted in applause and exclamations of admiration and respect. "Victory for Minato Namikaze," the examiner announced, his powerful voice echoing over the clamor of the crowd. That announcement sealed the outcome of the fight but also marked the beginning of the legend of Minato Namikaze, a name everyone knew would one day be synonymous with greatness both within and beyond the village's boundaries. Chapter 24, First Year 15. Third-Person POV. Ninja Academy, Konoha, Year 32. As the dust from the last fight settled, the crowd's energy shifted from vibrant excitement to animated and reflective conversation. The day's fights had ended, and now was the time to analyze the results, discuss the displayed skills, and ponder the future of these young shinobis. The spectators, still in their seats, began to discuss among themselves. "Did you see Minato's agility?" one asked, still impressed. "And Akame's Sharingan, so young and already so powerful," another responded. Groups of jonins and instructors gathered, speaking in lower tones but with equal enthusiasm, analyzing the abilities and potential of each child, making mental notes on how to guide and train them in the coming years. "Very impressive for first-year children, the Leaf Village is surely blessed with this generation," someone said. "Interesting is Minato Namikaze, will he break all the academy records in the coming years?" another asked curiously. "A Byakugan and an early Sharingan, it's a year full of talents." The Uchihas, in particular, surrounded Akame after he regained consciousness, impressed with his early activation of his Sharingan at such an age. Despite his defeat, he was still seen as a prodigy, someone who would certainly bring great prestige to the clan. The Hokage, along with other leaders and high-ranking ninjas, remained a bit longer, discussing what they had witnessed. They talked about how to cultivate and direct these emerging talents, ensuring that each child received the proper guidance and training to reach their maximum potential in the coming years. As the crowd left the arena, the atmosphere of excitement and competition gave way to a calm reflection. The children, now free from the uniforms that marked the intensity and seriousness of the tournament, began their journey back to their homes, accompanied by their guardians. Madame Guerite walked alongside him, observing him with a look that mixed pride and maternal concern. "You put up a good fight in the end," she said, breaking the comfortable silence that surrounded them. The sun, now touching the horizon, bathed the village in golden tones, casting long shadows and softening the lines of the day. "I managed to win in the end, but I was lucky. Fighting against the Sharingan is not easy," Minato replied modestly. Madame Guerite smiled, her expression lighting up with admiration and a touch of pride. "Even so, you received the title of Rookie of the Year, Minato. I'm proud of you, you have a bright future in your military career." Her voice was firm but carried a softness that spoke of her affection for the boy. "Thank you. But next year I'll do better. I'm going to train all vacation," Minato replied, his determination shining through his words, his posture a reflection of his unwavering will to improve and grow. Madame Guerite, however, offered a gentle sigh, concerned about the boy's well-being beyond his abilities as a shinobi. "That's good, but don't focus only on training. You missed much of your relationships with the other children at the orphanage this year," she warned him. Minato knew she was right. Though dedicated to his training, he felt the growing distance between him and the other children. Besides Tsuna and Makoto, with whom he shared mutual respect, he felt an increasing discomfort in his social interactions with children his age. He was no longer just a boy and it was uncomfortable to act as such. As Minato walked back to the orphanage, his mind a web of thoughts and plans. "I'll train more," he murmured to himself, a silent promise cast into the evening wind. "I can try now to use my shadow clones. If I have Suna with me, I can improve my taijutsu during the vacation," he reflected. "Speaking of physical fighting style, I'm going to look for Day. I need to strengthen my body to learn the 6 styles of the Navy and armament hockey, which requires a stronger body to develop these skills. Having him as a partner, despite that he hasn't developed the 8 gates, is still very useful. Minato murmured, hoping to improve his performance even more for the next year. As Minato pondered his future, the Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, returned to his tower to end the day with some final paperwork. The tower, a symbol of leadership and responsibility, was quiet, but this calm was interrupted by the arrival of an unexpected, but always intriguing visitor, Danzu Shimura. Danzu, with his imposing presence and calculating eyes, entered the room. Hiruzen, he greeted, his tone neutral but carrying layers of unspoken intention. I've seen the children, Danzu began, getting straight to the point. Hiruzen, aware of the implications, replied calmly but with an unwavering firmness. Yes, but as I've already told you, we'll review this in the coming years. He sat down, his posture reflecting the authority and wisdom of his position. The ANBU, always vigilant, positioned themselves discreetly, a constant presence of protection and service hidden around the room. Even so, I want to reserve some of them, especially that Minato Namikaze, Danzu declared, his voice revealing a specific interest in the young prodigy. Minato is out of the question, as are the future leaders of the clans. Someone made me reserve Minato, so he won't be able to enter your division, Hiruzen responded. Danzu raised an eyebrow, surprised and visibly frustrated. What? That was not our agreement. The root needs talents, he growled. Hiruzen, however, remained unshakable. Our most promising talents need to be nurtured for the benefit of the entire village, not just a single division. Minato and the others will be fundamental for the future of Konoha, he declared, ending the conversation with a note of finality that left little room for argument. But I need talents, Hiruzen, I want the best, insisted Danzu. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Hokage, maintained a serious and determined expression as he faced Danzu. Yes, and you will have yours, but Minato won't be part of it, he stated, his voice firm and resolute. Danzu, in turn, was clearly frustrated. You sought his abilities, we need to study them, Hiruzen. No one should predict attacks as he did without a jujutsu like Sharingan or Byakugan. He even proved superior to that Uchiha Sharingan. He argued, his voice carrying agreed. Hiruzen, however, remained unmoved. Yes, but we know nothing about this ability. So, I won't waste a talented young man with your studies. Danzu, impatient, tried once more. Think about it, Hiruzen. The boy must have some Kikei Genkai in his body, something we can benefit from. His insistence revealed a desire to possess and control whatever power Minato might have. My answer is no, Danzu. Hiruzen raised his voice, a rare tone for him, who usually maintained his calm. Jiraiya has taken an interest in the boy and I've already promised him to him when the young one graduates, so let's end this matter here. His decision was final, and there was no room for further discussion. As you wish, Hokage. Danzu growled, the last word laden with bitterness as he left the room, but before he exited the door, he turned back. And the Uchiha who opened the Sharingan? We'll keep an eye on it. Our teacher always said that the Sharingan could open from trauma. We can't assume a 6-year-old will be the next Madara. The third Hokage spoke and Danzu continued walking and closed the door. Hiruzen sighed deeply as his old friend left, his thoughts concerned with the future. It's just 1 year. Let's see how they fare until they graduate. He murmured, gazing at the moon, pondering the fate of Minato and the other talented children. The next day, well before the sun rose, Minato left the orphanage with a fervent determination. It was December, and he had just over 2 months before the start of the next academy year. He was resolved to dedicate himself entirely to becoming much stronger physically and even to improve his hockey, if possible. The child ran to his usual training spot. The world was still quiet, and the streets were empty, but Minato's heart was full of an unquenchable fire. He knew the next few months would be crucial in further improving his strength, wanting to reach new heights. Chapter 25, Second Year 01. Third Person POV. Training Camp, Konoha, Year 33. The morning was just beginning to lighten, casting a soft glow over the training field where Minato was already in action. His clothes were drenched in sweat as he practiced his taijutsu techniques, each kick and punch echoing with the sound of his concentrated breathing while his eyes were blindfolded. He was fighting against his own clone while his copy fought one another with limited vision, relying solely on his unique ability. His goal was clear: to become stronger, faster, more resilient. As he moved at an almost frantic pace, while battling his clone, a figure approached silently from where Minato was fighting his clone. Suna, with her blonde hair gently swaying in the cold January wind, watched Minato for a moment before calling out to him. "Minato! Stop this fight," she called out cheerfully. Surprised, Minato interrupted his training with his clone, removing the blindfold, dispelling the shadow clone, and turning to find Suna holding a box wrapped with a simple yet elegant bow. His face expressed a mix of surprise and curiosity. "Suna? What are you doing here so early?" Suna stepped forward, a shy but warm smile on her face. "I know you probably forgot, but today is January 25th, your birthday." She extended the box to him. "I wanted to be the first to give you a present." Minato was visibly surprised, his eyes widening a bit as he realized the date. "My birthday? You knew?" He accepted the present, his expression a mix of gratitude and admiration. Suna's smile was contagious, and the playful light in her eyes reflected the joy she felt in surprising Minato. "Yes, I picked up the date at the academy some time ago," she explained, her voice soft and friendly. "You are always so focused on training that I thought you might have forgotten." There was a tone of admiration in her words, and appreciation for Minato's dedication and determination. Holding the box with an almost ceremonial reverence, Minato felt a wave of warm emotion flood his heart with his friend doing this for him. It was rare to receive such gestures of consideration, and Suna's surprise touched him deeply. "Thank you, Suna. This means a lot to me," he murmured, and his voice, usually firm and confident, carried a layer of emotion that he rarely showed. His words were simple, but the gratitude he felt was immense and genuine. With hands following anticipation, he opened the present, and his eyes lit up to see what was inside. Are these weight seals?" "Incredible," he exclaimed, his surprise quickly turning into enthusiasm as he saw the papers tinged with fuinjutsu. The weight seals were exactly what he needed to take his training to the next level, a tool he had long desired but never had the means to acquire, as they were very expensive. Suna laughed, pleased with Minato's reaction. "Yes, you were always complaining that you needed them." "My great-grandmother made them when I asked," she said, her tone brimming with pride and joy. The mention of her great-grandmother added an extra layer of meaning to the gift. Minato looked at Suna, his expression now a mix of surprise and gratitude. "I don't know what to say, Suna. This will help me a lot," he said, his words sincere and full of appreciation. Minato quickly returned to the training spot with the seals placed on his clothes, leaving behind a stunned Suna. "So, are you going to spend your birthday stuck in more training?" Suna asked, a bit dissatisfied. "Yes." Minato responded with a raised eyebrow, ready to recreate the shadow clone. "Stop that. Let's go to the river," Suna exclaimed, grabbing Minato by the arm and dragging him to the nearby stream before he could react. "Hey, what are you doing bringing me here?" Minato demanded, realizing he was being dragged away without the ability to react by the Senju girl. Suna pulled Minato with cheerful determination, ignoring his mild protests. "Today, you're going to do something different, Minato. No clones, no training. Today, you're going to relax, even if it's just for a little while," she said, a mischievous glint in her eyes. As they approached the river, the soft sound of flowing water filled the air, a calm and steady melody. The sun, now higher in the sky, reflected off the water's surface, creating sparkling patterns of light. Suna released Minato's arm, pointing to the smooth stones on the bank. "Let's have a contest to see who can make a stone skip the most times on the water. My great-grandfather used to do this with his best friend," she suggested with a smile, recalling stories she heard about Hashirama with Mito, but never imagined that best friend would be Madara Uchiha. Minato looked at her, a bit disconcerted but curious. "Skipping stones on the river," he repeated, his voice mixing disbelief and a bit of interest. It was such a simple activity, so far removed from his rigorous training, it seemed almost alien.
Yes, Suna exclaimed, carefully selecting a smooth stone. Watch, like this. She demonstrated, throwing the stone with an elegant wrist movement.
The stone bounced several times before sinking, leaving concentric circles in the water.
Minato watched, the corner of his mouth curving into a half smile.
Maybe today is a day to just relax, he murmured internally.
Minato chose his own stone, feeling its weight and surface.
With a focused look, he threw it, watching it bounce repeatedly on the water. This is strangely satisfying, he admitted, a feeling of relaxation beginning to take over him.
Suna laughed, happy to see Minato engaging in the activity she suggested. See? Not everything has to be about training and being the best.
Sometimes, just enjoying the moment, is enough. They continued, throwing stones, competing in a friendly manner, and laughing when one or the other made a particularly good or bad throw. Over time, Minato allowed himself to truly relax, the laughter and the soothing sound of the water easing the constant tension he usually carried.
While Minato and Suna continued their simple but joyful stone-skipping contest, a new figure approached the river. It was Makoto Uchiha.
So, this is where you two have been all this time, she murmured, approaching. Makoto walked with quiet elegance, carrying a picnic basket in her arms. The sunlight filtered through the leaves of the trees danced gently over her black hair as she approached, a soft smile on her lips. I didn't expect to find you two here, Makoto said, her tone calm and friendly. She placed the basket on the ground, revealing an array of snacks, fruits, and refreshments carefully prepared. I heard it was Minato's birthday and thought a picnic would be a nice way to celebrate.
Minato looked surprised at Makoto. Makoto, even you knew about my birthday? You didn't have to bother, he began but was interrupted by Tsuna. Of course she had to. It's your birthday, Minato. Even for an Uchiha, she's still your friend, isn't she? And today, you're going to enjoy every moment.
Tsuna exclaimed, clearly pleased with Makoto's addition to the small group, despite their usual rivalry.
Makoto laughed, waving them over to sit around the basket. Come on, Minato. Today is a day to relax and have fun, and I'm willing to spend a day with the Senju to celebrate your birthday.
No training, no worries, just a good time with friends. Reluctantly, but curiously, Minato joined them, sitting on the soft grass by the river's edge. As they began to enjoy the snacks, the conversation flowed naturally, revolving around funny stories from the academy, plans for the future, and even some friendly teasing. Minato, who usually kept to himself and focused on his training, found himself laughing and participating more than he expected with his best friends in the last year. While Minato, Suna, and Makoto settled around the picnic basket, the peaceful environment of the river provided the perfect backdrop for an afternoon of relaxation and camaraderie.
Minato, still a bit displaced from the situation, sat cross-legged listening to the girls holding the seals one by Suna. Suna, always observant, noticed the subtle tension in Minato and decided to break the ice. She picked up one of the sandwiches prepared by Makoto and lightly tossed it towards Minato, hitting him gently on the arm. Hey, Minato. You can't eat weight seals. Try this, it's much better, she said, laughing. Minato, caught off guard by the playful act, couldn't help but smile. Picking up the sandwich, he took a bite and nodded in approval. You're right, Suna. This is really good, he laughed. Makoto, who had been more reserved, watched the interaction with a slight smile. Deciding to join in, she extended a bowl of fruit to Tsuna and Minato. I tried to make something that all of us would like. I think we need a bit of sweetness after all this talk about training, she commented. The conversation flowed more naturally now, with laughter and shared stories. Suna, feeling inspired, proposed a game. How about we play Truth or Dare? It could be a fun way to get to know each other better, she suggested, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Minato and Makoto exchanged a look, a mix of hesitation and curiosity on their faces. All right, but nothing too extreme, Minato agreed, and Makoto nodded, reluctantly agreeing. The game started innocently enough, with questions about favorite foods and childhood memories. However, as it progressed, the questions and challenges became more personal and revealing. This resulted in some red cheeks admitting some things about Minato from both girls. As the day came to an end, Minato looked at Suna and Makoto, a feeling of gratitude and camaraderie filling his heart. "Thank you for today," he said sincerely. "I didn't realize how much I needed this." Suna smiled, and Makoto nodded, both feeling a similar connection. They began to gather their things, preparing to return to the village. Chapter 26, Second Year 02. Third Person POV. Training Camp, Konoha, Year 33. The orphanage was quiet and welcoming, illuminated by soft lights as the day came to an end. Minato, with thoughts of the meeting he had with Suna and Makoto, was greeted by an unexpected and warm scene. Madame Guerite, with a maternal smile and a cheerful laugh, extended to him a carefully decorated cake as soon as he entered. "Happy birthday, Minato," she exclaimed, her eyes shining with affection. Minato's surprise was evident, his face taking on an expression of shock and admiration. He didn't expect anything, accustomed to simple or non-existent celebrations over the years in his memories, so he was surprised by this. "Don't look at me like that, it's your birthday." "Congratulations." Madame Guerite continued, encouraging him to accept the celebration. The other children from the orphanage, drawn by the sweet smell of the cake, joined the chorus. "Happy birthday, Minato," one of them said, pulling the chorus of childish voices that echoed through the room. "Well, thank you, I guess." Minato muttered, his voice low but filled with unexpected gratitude. He was accustomed to being the forgotten one, the one who trained alone and focused only on becoming stronger. But there, surrounded by other children and the careful attention of Madame Guerite, he felt differently in his heart, a sense of belonging and joy. The night unfolded with laughter and conversation as everyone ate the cake. Madame Guerite, always attentive, watched the children with a satisfied look. As soon as they ate and celebrated, everyone went to bed with the curfew. Minato, lying in his bed, couldn't help but smile slightly. The day had been different from any other birthday he had had. Not only had he spent the day with Suna and Makoto, his best friends, but he also felt the warmth and celebration at the orphanage, something he rarely experienced. Minato reflected on the last few weeks since the end of the first year at the academy. He had dedicated himself to refining his chakra, practicing tirelessly with the leaf on his forehead. He was not yet ready for more advanced techniques like walking on trees or over water, but he knew his time would come. More impressive was his ability with shadow clones. Now, he could create 3, each an extension of himself, training and learning simultaneously. This technique had become a vital part of his regime, allowing him to multiply his training time and experience. With the knowledge that this technique provided him, it was the biggest cheat in this world, in his opinion. Thus, Minato went to bed satisfied that night. The training field was filled the next day with Minato for his training regime again. However, this day was different. Minato arrived at his training spot and immediately felt the presence of someone hidden among the trees. "Since the last day of the academy ended, I have been watched by someone," Minato reflected as he did his usual stretches to train as any other day. His haki allowed him to sense the hidden presence in the nearby trees. It was a Chunin, at least in ability and discretion, that he felt in his senses. He might be some agent of Danzu. That dam, Minato pondered with a twinge of irritation. He knew of Danzu's ambitions, and it wouldn't be long before that man would be interested in unique abilities like his, as it was no longer a secret that he had a unique ability. Deciding not to give these spies the show they desired, Minato put on his usual blindfold and began his taijutsu training as he would normally. He moved with blind precision, each punch and kick a dance of strength and control. The recently added weight seals to his training made each movement demand more of him, but also made him stronger, more resilient. He didn't summon his shadow clones, aware of the constant gaze on him and the B-rank jutsu would attract unwanted attention, but worked with fierce intensity, as if fighting against an invisible opponent. As the morning gave way to afternoon, Suna appeared. Her announcement of arrival broke the tension in the air. "Minato," she greeted, her voice strong and clear cutting through the quiet. She walked up to him with firm steps, her presence always as imposing as it was friendly. "Hello, Suna." Minato greeted her, ready for another day of training? He said and quickly moved a finger as a sign, making Suna slightly raise an eyebrow and nod discreetly, maintaining her normal expression and posture, recognizing that signal from Minato.
It was a gesture they had previously agreed on, a sign that they were not alone.
Suna, always attentive, immediately grasped its meaning.
They began a small sparring, a routine both were well accustomed to.
To any casual observer, it seemed like just another training session between two dedicated students.
However, beneath the surface, there was a palpable tension, an awareness that they were being watched.
When the hidden agent finally withdrew, Minato let out a sigh of relief. "So he's gone?" Suna commented, her voice low, a rhetorical question hanging in the air.
"Yes."
Minato confirmed, his tense expression softening slightly.
Suna, noticing the concern on his face, decided to touch on a subject that was on her mind. "You know, Minato, you are a skilled sensor. No child should recognize things like this at your age, no matter how skilled they are.
My great-grandmother said that you must be special." Suna murmured, a tone of admiration mixed with concern in her voice.
"What?
You spoke of my abilities to Mito-sama?" Minato asked, a glimpse of surprise and a sense of betrayal appearing in his eyes. Suna raised her hands defensively. "Don't get so upset.
I had to say we were being watched, so I had to mention your strange ability that could recognize an observer from a short distance," she explained as if it were the most obvious thing to do. Minato sighed, the frustration disappearing as quickly as it came.
"Whatever, now that he's gone, let's train with clones," he declared.
In an instant, he formed 3 shadow clones, while Suna, with more chakra and control, created 5. This was a common scene, thus they spent their days training together, developing their skills, and facing challenges in sparring. Over time, Makoto also joined them when she could escape the watchful eyes of her clan.
The weeks of intense training had passed like a blur for Minato and Suna.
Each day brought a new challenge, a new opportunity to hone their skills and strengthen their bond. They had become stronger, faster, and incredibly synchronized in their movements and strategies.
The atmosphere of friendly competition between them only added fuel to their determination.
Now, sitting together by the river's edge, skipping stones on the calm water, they shared a moment of tranquility before the return to their academic routine.
"Ready to go back to class?" Suna asked, her stone bouncing several times before sinking.
"Of course, I'm the top rookie. I intend to keep being that this year too," Minato replied with a confident smile. He picked up another stone, throwing it with his perfected technique to beat the girl at their little game. Suna laughed, a glint of challenge in her eyes. "Just wait for me to surpass you, smarty pants," she said, delivering a light but surprisingly powerful punch to Minato's chest.
He didn't have time to react, caught off guard.
"That hurt. You're increasing your strength a lot lately,"
Minato murmured, rubbing the spot she hit. He was impressed, but not surprised. Suna always had incredible potential. "I'd been training with my mom."
"You have no idea how strong she is. She broke a stone in front of me with just a punch. It was incredible."
Suna spoke, her admiration and pride for her mother evident in her voice.
"I believe it, trust me,"
Minato replied, thoughtful.
He had memories of Tsunade Senju as one of the most powerful shinobi in Konoha, especially when she fought with the other Kages against Madara.
You never really met her." Suna looked at him with a suspicious gaze, curious about Minato's familiarity with her mother.
"Well, who doesn't know Tsunade Senju, the disciple of the third Hokage?"
Minato replied, trying to deflect Suna's scrutinizing gaze. Whatever. It's getting late, I'd better be going, see you tomorrow." "Bye, Minato." Suna stood up, the energy and joy always present in her farewell.
She ran off, her figure quickly disappearing among the trees.
Minato watched her leave before getting up.
The sky was tinged with the colors of twilight, and he knew it was time to return to the orphanage.
Tomorrow would begin his first day of class in the second year. Chapter 27, Second Year 03. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 33. As the dawn of a new academic day approached, the bustle and anticipation filled the air at the orphanage.
Madame Garit, always the maternal and encouraging figure, stood at the door, wishing each child success and good luck.
"Good luck on the first day of school," she exclaimed with a warm and genuine smile.
"Yes, Madame Garit, came the enthusiastic chorus from the children, their faces aglow with a mix of nervousness and excitement. Minato, among the second-year students, was in the midst of the group. He was not alone. Beside him were new students, eager and hopeful after going through the start of the school year trials as Minato did last year. Minato had become a small idol among the younger ones after his achievement of being first in Class A. Now, all the classes at the academy were united by the shared beginning of another academic year. Upon arriving at the academy, the familiar buzz of animated conversations and laughter filled the air with all the children. The building was as crowded as Minato remembered from the previous year, with a sea of new and some familiar faces. As he entered the room indicated on his new schedule, Minato noticed that despite the small changes in the room, much remained the same. The students had already occupied their usual places, creating a familiar pattern of voices and colors as they chatted among themselves. He headed to the back of the room, his preferred spot, and noticed with a smile that Makoto was already there, settled in. "Hello, Minato." Makoto greeted, her smile a rare but sincere expression of welcome coming from the Uchiha. "Hello, Makoto. Is Tsuna late?" Minato asked, looking toward where Tsuna normally sat, finding only the empty space. "I'm here." Tsuna's voice suddenly rang out, and Minato turned in time to see her emerge from behind a cloth she used to camouflage against the wall, a typical trick of her mischievous and unpredictable nature. She advanced for a surprise attack, trying to hit Minato with a quick punch. Minato, for a moment, was stunned by the similarity of the scene to something he remembered from another life, a memory of a blonde boy named Naruto hiding from his pursuers with the same trick in the original work's first episode. But the surprise soon gave way to instinct, and he skillfully dodged Tsuna's punch. With an awkward movement, she lost her balance and fell to the floor. "Always trying to surprise me, huh, Tsuna?" he teased, as she accepted the help and got back on her feet. The classroom, which normally buzzed with the murmur of conversations and laughter typical of the first day of school, suddenly focused on the small spectacle provided by the trio. Makoto, always ready for a sharp remark, didn't miss the chance to mock Tsuna's failed attempt. "Ha ha 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 ha. You even made her fall to the floor. I told you it wouldn't work, Senju." Makoto spoke, a mocking laugh accompanying her words. Tsuna, now standing thanks to Minato's help, shot an annoyed look at Makoto before addressing Minato. "Damn, you and that weird ability." Tsuna murmured with frustration over Minato's capacity to always evade her pranks. "Tsuna, these pranks are dangerous, you could get hurt." Minato warned with a concerned expression. He was used to coming out unscathed from Tsuna's antics, but he didn't want to see her injured. "I don't want you worrying about me," Tsuna replied, a blush appearing on her cheeks as she moved away to sit on the other side, leaving Minato no choice but to sit between her and Makoto. The attention of the class gradually returned to their own conversations, and Makoto took the opportunity to question Minato about his plans for the year. "So Minato, what are your plans for this year?" she asked curiously. "Study, train, and get a job. I need some money," Minato replied, his voice carrying a mix of determination and realism. He knew that the upcoming year would demand more from him, not just academically, but also personally. "Interesting, are you going to start sending clones to school?" Makoto asked, intrigued by the strategy Minato mentioned during the holidays. "Yes, this year it's possible since we'll only have 2 days of practical classes per week. I can send clones to attend the theoretical classes, with the original working or training elsewhere," Minato explained. It was a bold and risky tactic, but he had carefully considered his options. "But if you get caught, you could be in trouble, you know that?" Tsuna intervened, her voice laden with genuine concern. "I'll only be in trouble if I get caught, Tsuna. So I'll do it without getting caught," Minato responded, his confidence instilling a respectful silence in his friends. "Well, if that's the case, I'll do the same as Minato," Tsuna replied, crossing her arms, a spark of challenge in her eyes. The idea of being left behind was unthinkable to her, always so fierce in her determination to excel. "You, Senju?" Makoto raised an eyebrow, surprised and somewhat skeptical of Tsuna's declaration. "Of course, Uchiha. I won't be left behind." "You should worry about yourself since you'll be increasingly left behind by us." Tsuna spoke with typical arrogance.
TSK. You think I won't do it? I'm with you guys, then.
I don't know the shadow clone, but Minato will teach me, and I'll show you that I'm superior to you, Senju.
Makoto responded with a firmness that made it clear she wouldn't accept being underestimated. Oh? You're full of yourself, Uchiha? Suna retorted, but before the conversation could escalate further, Minato intervened. Suna, let's talk about this later, the teacher is coming in.
Minato said and pointed to the door, where a new instructor entered the room. The man who entered wore sunglasses and discreet clothing, a marked change from the more familiar style of Professor Fuma.
Isn't that Professor Fuma? Has he been replaced this year? Makoto asked, confirming everyone's surprise. Hello everyone, my name is Kui Aburame, I'll be the Chunin in charge of you this year.
Professor Fuma is taking care of the first year, I will take his place this year, the man announced calmly, his voice low but clear.
A new teacher. What a drag. Suna murmured, clearly less enthused by the change.
He's from the Aburame clan, but he doesn't seem to be as shy as all the others.
Minato observed.
He noticed the classmates from the Aburame clan, usually reclusive and reserved, appearing equally surprised by the new teacher. The first day of Minato's second year at the Konoha Academy was marked by the introduction of a new teacher, Kui Aburame, whose approach was noticeably different from that of Professor Fuma. Without the usual discussions about dreams and ambitions, the room filled with notes and focused attention as the teacher shared the theoretical classes of mathematics and ninja world history that followed, demanding the students' complete attention. At the end of the day, Minato headed to his usual training spot. He was committed to improving his taijutsu and chakra control, and for that, he used the basic taijutsu scrolls he had acquired at the academy. If I have the 6 styles of the Navy, I'll have my own style, Minato murmured to himself, reflecting on his aspirations and limitations. But, for now, I'll have to make do with the basic techniques from the academy. Despite his closeness to Tsuna, he was aware of the barriers his lack of affiliation with a powerful clan brought. He would never achieve a taijutsu style as good as the great clans had and could never acquire a scroll. He knew that, although his speed and strength were notable, his techniques were still inferior to those of students from the great clans. The next day, committed to his rigorous routine, Minato created a clone to attend classes in his place, while his original body headed to the training spot. Hours passed as Minato dedicated himself to training throughout the day. He alternated between taijutsu exercises and meditation to improve his chakra control. At sunset, exhausted but satisfied with the day's progress, Minato returned to the orphanage. As Minato's clone dispersed, the memories of the day's theoretical classes flowed into him. Suna and Makoto, though curious and impressed, still hesitated to use the same strategy as Minato. But surprised by Minato's audacity, they finally gained the courage needed to follow in his footsteps. However, before they could implement the plan, Minato needed to teach Makoto the shadow clone technique. The next day, repeating his method, Minato sent another clone to school while his original body headed to the training spot. Suna was already there, practicing diligently, waiting for him. Together, they dove into an intense training session, honing their techniques and strength. As the sun reached its peak in the sky, Makoto joined them, having discreetly escaped from the academy. She asked Minato to teach her how to create shadow clones. Patiently, alongside another clone of his, Minato guided Makoto through the complex steps. After a few hours of practice and guidance, Makoto finally mastered the technique, albeit limited to one clone. With this new ability, the trio began to skip theoretical classes, opting to send clones in their place, while reserving their physical presence for practical sessions where the risk of unmasking the clones was high. This tactic allowed them to maximize training time and personal growth during theoretical days. Meanwhile, Minato looked for a source of income to support his needs and perhaps save for future resources. He found a job at a warehouse of a local grocery store, where his tasks included noting inventories and carrying heavy items for the owner. It was a discreet job, away from watchful eyes that might recognize him as an academy student, and it paid enough to get by for the next few months. He began to divide his chakra between 2 more clones, one at school and another at work, while his original body trained with Suna and Makoto. It was exhausting. Minato arrived at the orphanage each night feeling every muscle protest from fatigue.
However, he persisted, knowing that each day of work and training brought him closer to his goals. This routine extended over the days, weeks, and months. Minato, Suna, and Makoto became increasingly synchronized and strong for their ages, as Minato balanced his school responsibilities, work, and personal ambitions. Chapter 28, Second Year 04. Third Person POV. Konoha, Year 33. As the months unfolded, Minato solidified his position as the most prominent student in his class once again.
His unmatched dedication and skill made him unbeatable in sparring and practical exams. In theoretical areas, Suna emerged as a formidable competitor, especially with her knowledge in medicine, a passion she cultivated under her mother's tutelage over the past months. However, even with her intensive studies and undeniable talent, Suna still remained in second place, with Minato maintaining the lead.
Minato's precision with kunais had also notably improved. He was now among the top 5 in his class in this skill. His status as the number 1 rookie was undisputable, and his reputation only grew with each new achievement. Suna and Makoto, too, had made significant progress, surpassing many of their peers thanks to the secret training with Minato. The three formed a formidable team, pushing each other beyond their limits and sharing techniques and strategies within their bounds. They had created an efficient system, sending clones to theoretical classes while dedicating their original bodies to intense training and personal improvement. However, Minato had his doubts about how safe his secret was. He had noticed the presence of bugs at his training location and wondered if Professor Kuiaburane was aware of his escapades with Makoto and Suna. Despite never having confronted Minato or mentioned his suspicions, the uncertainty remained, leaving Minato cautious and always on alert. With the money he had accumulated from his job, Minato had invested in additional weights and seals to enhance his training. These new tools not only increased the intensity of his sessions but also boosted his physical development and ninja skills. When Madame Garit inquired about how he had acquired these resources, Minato was honest. His revelation about using clones for both school and work surprised the old lady, but she didn't express many objections. She saw that, despite his unconventional tactics, Minato continued to excel academically and maintained an honest source of income. His impeccable performance and conduct reassured her, and she recognized that Minato was doing what he thought necessary to enhance his future potential. The months followed, and Minato, Suna, and Makoto continued their journey, each growing, learning, and overcoming challenges. As time passed, Minato noticed significant changes in his body. The rigorous training routine, combined with the weight seals and the development of his skills, was shaping him into an increasingly capable shinobi. He could feel his strength increasing, a testament to the latent potential residing in his young body. However, he was conscious of his current limitations with his young age. At 7 years old, his body was still developing, and more advanced techniques like the 6 styles of the Navy were beyond his reach for now. Yet, this reality did not discourage him; on the contrary, it encouraged him to excel in other areas and prepare for the moment when he could learn these techniques. On a day of practical class, Minato joined Suna and Makoto at the academy. "Minato, what are you going to do?" Suna asked, curious about Minato's plans for that day. "I'm going to study Fuinjutsu. I heard there are some beginner books in the library, so I plan to study that, in addition to some other chakra techniques," Minato responded with a thoughtful expression. He was always looking for ways to expand his knowledge and skills. "Why haven't you used the library before? What's changed this time?" Makoto inquired, noticing the change in Minato's approach. "I'm developing my body and refining my chakra control. Now I can make 3 clones, but my 7-year-old body has a limit. I'll focus on absorbing knowledge while my body matures," Minato explained. "Well, I can't say you're wrong. That's why I'm studying a lot. My mother says this is the best time to read because later it's going to be much harder for all of us," Suna shared, agreeing with Minato's strategy. She was also taking advantage of this crucial period to absorb as much knowledge as possible under her mother's tutelage. "Good for you. Most of my clan only have fire jutsu scrolls, it's hard to find anything useful," Makoto said. Minato, always the optimist and encourager, tried to cheer her up. "You should focus on your strengths. You can cast the shadow clone jutsu and even the fireball. At 7 years old, you're very cool, Makoto.
His tone was sincere, trying to highlight the impressive abilities that Makoto already possessed.
But I don't have as much chakra as you and Senju over there.
I can only cast one clone, and I get tired quickly after launching a few jutsus, she murmured, expressing her frustration. But you have a powerful lineage, there are still positives in your blood. I heard that you Uchihas received the physical strength of Rikuta Sannin. Isn't that fantastic, he encouraged, referring to one of the most legendary stories in the ninja world. Suna, overhearing the conversation, showed her skepticism. What story is that, Minato? She murmured, clearly doubtful of the claim's veracity. It's true, Minato affirmed with conviction, not minding sharing one of the world's most important secrets with his friends.
Makoto, skeptical, rolled her eyes.
Yeah, you're going to tell that fanciful story about a man who possessed the legendary Rinnegan and that his lineage divided into Uchihas, Senjus, and Uzumakis.
You said you read this in a book, right?
Yes, and I believe in the book, Minato affirmed, even if he was slightly lying about the origin of his knowledge. Suna, with her arms crossed, expressed her disappointment. That's a children's story, Minato.
I expected more from you, honestly. Whatever. I'm going to lunch, I'll send a clone to the library to see what I can find.
He walked away, creating a clone that headed to the library while he himself went to the practical class. The practical class that day went as usual, with Minato standing out among his peers. He ran the course with impressive agility and dexterity, finishing in first place once again. His precision with kunais was notable, hitting 85% of his targets, and in all the sparring, he emerged as the undisputed winner. His commitment and skill were evident, and he was quickly becoming an example for the other students. As the class ended and the students began to disperse, a familiar voice caught Minato's attention. Minato, called Professor Aburame, his voice calm but authoritative. Minato, a bit surprised, approached the professor while the other students continued to leave the room. Yes, Professor. Minato replied, maintaining a respectful posture and waiting to find out what had caught the teacher's attention. I've seen that you're interested in learning Fuinjutsu, Professor Aburame began, catching Minato completely off guard. The revelation left him momentarily speechless. Only Tsuna and Makoto knew of his interest in the art of seals and that he had sent a clone to the library.
What? How did you know? Minato couldn't help expressing his shock.
The idea that his secret escapades and studies had been discovered was something he hadn't considered, despite some suspicions. Don't think that I don't know about your escapades throughout the year, Minato. You're a great student, but you still have a lot to learn, as you're only a 7-year-old child, the teacher continued, but there was a certain pride in his tone. Minato waited, nervous, anticipating some form of punishment or reprimand.
So? He murmured, uncertain of what was to come next. Then, I'm proud of you, the professor declared, to Minato's surprise. Can you imagine how it is to split your chakra into 4 parts, creating 3 shadow clones? No genin should do that, but you do and stay all day with it. I was expecting something like this from a senju like Tsunade's daughter, but you are surprising. Minato felt a wave of relief and confusion.
So you knew about all my clones all this time, he asked, still stunned by the revelation.
Of course, I knew.
I may seem like an ordinary chunin, but in the Aburames, we are specialists in tracking. I knew you were a clone in the 2nd week of your escapades, Professor Aburame explained, his expression calm and inscrutable. Minato, with a mix of anxiety and caution, stared at Professor Aburame, searching his eyes for any indication of what the future held for him. What's going to happen to me now? He asked, the concern evident in his voice. Professor Aburame observed him closely before responding.
What do you want to do? You know I can recommend you for early graduation.
You know how to use a forbidden jutsu, learning the other basic techniques should be quite easy for you, he said, presenting Minato with a path few had the opportunity to traverse. However, he continued, as if he already knew Minato's answer before asking. But I feel that you don't want that, do you? The question was rhetorical, a confirmation of what he had already perceived about the young shinobi in front of him. Minato hesitated for a moment before responding. No, I don't want early graduation. I need to further increase my knowledge and improve my strength. I feel I wouldn't have the time I have now if I become a genin. His answer was firm.
Even if it makes you famous?
Graduating at 7 would make you have a famous name in the military records. I don't doubt you will break all the academy records, but graduating at 7 will open many doors for your future, Professor Aburame argued, presenting Minato with the tempting prospect of recognition and opportunities.
Sorry, Professor, but I'm not ready yet, Minato replied.
He had his reasons, his own goals and ambitions that transcended the mere pursuit of fame or early recognition. Moreover, he wanted to be in the academy when Kushina arrived in the village, wishing to see the future Jinchuriki.
Understanding Minato's determination and thoughtful thinking, Professor Aburame nodded in approval. I understand, I can relate to that.
But I'll leave something for you, he said, taking out a basic Fuinjutsu manual from his clan. I made sure to send a clone to my house and get it.
I noticed your clone didn't find anything in the library, so here's a manual for beginners. Minato, surprised, took the book.
He quickly deactivated a clone to confirm Professor Aburame's words and discovered that indeed the library didn't have what he needed.
Thank you, Professor, he exclaimed, the joy evident in his voice as he held the manual.
I'm counting on your bright future, Minato, Professor Aburame murmured, watching the young boy leave the room. He saw in Minato not just a talented student, but a shinobi who promised to shape the future. With the manual in hand and a new sense of purpose, Minato left the room, his mind buzzing with the possibilities that Fuinjutsu could offer him.
Chapter 29, Second Year 05. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 33.
Minato held the Aburame clan's Fuinjutsu manual as if it were a treasure as he returned to the orphanage. He was eager to dive into the pages and absorb every bit of knowledge he could. With a new goal in mind, he dedicated himself to learning the basics of Fuinjutsu that late afternoon, an ancient and complex art of sealing. Minato sent a clone for training while he focused with the original on learning Fuinjutsu. In the following days, whenever he was not at the academy or training his body and chakra, Minato could be found with his nose buried in the manual. He studied each chapter and seal diagram meticulously, understanding the theories behind the seals and how they manipulated chakra in various powerful ways. He learned about different types of basic seals, their functions, and applications, and began to understand how he could incorporate them into his own ninja style. Aware that practice was as crucial as theoretical study, Minato knew he needed suitable materials to start practicing his calligraphy and seal creation. Thus, with the money he had saved from his job, he purchased regular ink and a fine brush. These materials were not cheap, he had to learn first to improve his calligraphy before using chakra ink. With his new materials in hand, Minato began practicing the calligraphy necessary to create effective seals. He found he was terrible with writing, but this only strengthened his determination to improve quickly. After getting used to this type of training, Minato began to put a clone to practice while the original would do more intense training.
His clone spent hours practicing, repeating the same characters over and over, perfecting his technique.
He filled pages and pages with seals, comparing each attempt to the book's examples, seeking to achieve perfection. Over time, his hands became steadier, his lines more precise, and his seals more potent.
Minato also began experimenting with simple seals, applying them to small objects and observing the effects.
He started with basic tasks, like making an object glow or emit a sound when activated with a bit of chakra. Each success was a small victory, each mistake a valuable lesson. He was determined to master this art, knowing that Fuinjutsu could be an incredibly powerful tool in his arsenal. On a sunny day after school, Minato met Suna at their usual training spot, a secluded area where they often practiced and discussed their skills and progress. Suna was curious about Minato's recent activities, especially after noticing that he was carrying something different with him, a book and inks with brushes. "Hi, Suna," Minato greeted with a wave, his face lit up with an animated smile.
"I've been working on something new." Suna, with an intrigued look, asked, "What is it?"
"You're always full of surprises."
"It's a Fuinjutsu manual," Minato began, displaying the book he had received from Professor Aburame. "I'm learning the art of seals. It's fascinating, but I'm still stuck on the calligraphy." Suna's eyes widened in surprise and admiration. "Really? That's amazing, Minato. How did you get it? Professor Aburain gave it to me, Minato revealed.
He knows about our clones and, instead of reprimanding me, offered me this book to delve deeper into Fuinjutsu when he discovered my interest in the area.
He thinks I can make good use of it. Suna was impressed not just with the professor's generosity but also with the trust he placed in Minato.
That's a big deal and a great opportunity, Minato.
What have you learned so far?
Minato opened the book to the pages he had been studying and discussed what he had learned, from the basic principles of Fuinjutsu to the calligraphy techniques and the first attempts to create functional seals, but he could not execute anything since Fuinjutsu needs better chakra control and calligraphy than he possessed.
Suna listened attentively, absorbing every detail. That's really complicated, but if anyone can learn this quickly, it's you.
My great-grandmother made me practice calligraphy since I was 4, it was horrible, she said in her usual way. Actually, I have some tips that might help you practice, she continued. When you're training with kunais and shurikens, you need precision and control.
Maybe you can apply the same concentration and precision to drawing the seals with your calligraphy. Minato nodded, acknowledging the smart suggestion. That makes sense.
I'll try to incorporate that technique into my practice. They spent more time discussing possible applications of Fuinjutsu and how Minato could improve his chakra control and calligraphy to apply to the seals. A few days later, there was an odd sight at the training field. Minato had sent one clone to school, another to work, one to learn calligraphy, and his original body took the day to train and hone his observation haki, which seemed to be reaching a new threshold. Minato's clone dipped the brush into the normal ink and moved it with meticulous precision, forming seal characters one after another in a corner of the place where the trio was at that moment. Suna, curious and always ready to help, offered suggestions and encouragement. Try to keep your hand a bit firmer here, she said, pointing to a particular curve in the seal. Meanwhile, Makoto was throwing shurikens with deadly precision in a corner, each embedding exactly in the center of the target. However, she couldn't help but get involved in the conversation, especially when she saw an opportunity to tease Suna.
Do you really think you're going to make him improve with those obvious tips, Suna?
Makoto called out, a teasing smile on her face. Suna rolled her eyes, a reluctant smile appearing on her lips. At least I'm trying to help, unlike certain people who just know how to throw shurikens all day, Uchiha.
Makoto laughed and responded, throwing shurikens is an art, Senju. Maybe you should try to improve your skills instead of giving tips about calligraphy.
Although the argument between Suna and Makoto was a common occurrence, Minato knew that deep down, they respected and cared for each other. It was this camaraderie and mutual support that made their training days not only productive but also enjoyable. In the following months, Minato dedicated himself to a rigorous routine that balanced his education at the academy, intensive training, and work. Every day, he attended classes at the academy, where he continued to excel, maintaining his position as the top student. To support his needs and invest in more materials for his Fuinjutsu study, Minato continued to work hard at his job in the grocery store. He saved every penny earned to buy more quality ink and brushes.
Minato, we're finally going to finish the second year.
I heard from my father that the conflict is ready to burst into the world, Makoto spoke to Minato as they trained.
It's true, we're about to enter the second ninja war.
Minato spoke, in a few years the war would break out. Minato never had precise knowledge about the events before Naruto, and the fanfics he read were not official events made by the original author, but by the writers and their logic, so he could expect most things to happen in an unknown way to him.
Do you think we'll graduate early? She asked.
Honestly, I think so, maybe not at 8 years old since it's forbidden to send children to war, but we won't have the same privilege of graduating at 13 years old, he spoke sincerely. And to think we're going to the next year, these months have passed so quickly. She murmured, looking at Minato in a somewhat strange way. Well, at least we are getting stronger to survive, that's going to be our survival, he said, referring to the war, which would not be easy for them. Now, after months of relentless dedication, tomorrow would mark the last day of class for the year.
Minato felt a mix of relief and anticipation.
The academic year had been a time of constant training for Minato, Suna, and Makoto, incredibly productive.
Well, I'm going back. My father will send ninjas after me if I don't return. So, see you tomorrow, Minato. Makoto said and got up to leave. See you later, Makoto.
Minato began to pack up his materials and started to return to the orphanage, tomorrow marking the last day of the second year.
Chapter 30, Second Year 06. Third Person POV. Konoha, Year 33. At the dawn of the last day of the academic year, Minato woke up with a mix of satisfaction and anticipation.
The day had finally arrived, marking the end of another year at the academy. Although there wasn't as much public as last year, Minato was determined to maintain his prominent position in the class.
Minato chose a simple and functional outfit for the last day of school.
He wore a clean, well-fitted white t-shirt. Complementing the shirt, Minato wore black shorts that fell comfortably above the knees, creating a visual balance that was both discreet and elegant. After dressing and eating with the other kids in the kitchen, he picked up his Fuinjutsu manual and other materials for one last review. Upon arriving at the academy, he felt the lively atmosphere. Students were torn between excitement for the imminent holidays and anxiety for the final results. Conversations and laughter filled the air, as Minato passed by other students from various years and classes. In the classroom, he felt a climate of anticipation among his peers. Minato sat next to his friends, all immersed in the unique atmosphere of the day. The teacher began the class with reviews of the year, rekindling memories and lessons learned. Soon after, he distributed the written test, marking the beginning of the final exams. While working on the test, Suna spoke to Minato. "I heard we're going to start learning jutsus next year," Suna murmured. "They're basic jutsus, we learn them easily in our clans." Makoto joined the conversation. Minato couldn't help but mutter softly, "Lucky you." He spoke more to himself than to the others. Unlike his classmates, Minato didn't have a clan or a family to teach him. The older children from the orphanage were all he had, and even that option was not ideal. Turning his attention back to the test, Minato delved into the questions. He reflected internally on the simplicity of the subjects, noting how some questions could be solved using formulas unknown in this world. Yet, he answered each question with ease. As the first part of the day came to an end with the conclusion of the written test, it was no surprise to anyone that Minato was the first to finish, achieving a maximum score. His exemplary performance was expected as usual by everyone. After lunch, the practical exams came. The courtyard was reserved for the second-year students, and Minato stood out once again. He dominated the physical test, demonstrated almost perfect accuracy with the kunai on 95% of the targets, and won all the taijutsu fights, including a particularly challenging one against Akame Uchiha and his Sharingan. He finished the day again as the number one student. At the end of the day, Choza approached him. "Hey, Minato. Do you want to go to the steakhouse with us?" Choza asked suddenly. Sure, why not? Minato thought for a bit. He had nothing to lose that day. After accepting to hang out a bit with his classmates, he turned to Tsuna. "Do you want to go too?" he asked the Senju girl. "Sure, let's go," she replied easily. "And you, Makoto? Want to come too?" Minato turned to Makoto as well. Makoto, however, hesitated, her expression mixing the desire to join and the obligation she felt. "Sorry, my father is waiting for me at the clan, I won't be able to accompany you." Her voice carried a note of regret. Minato nodded in understanding. "It's okay, we'll do something next year," he replied with a small smile. With the class over, Minato approached Professor Aburame after coordinating with his classmates, carrying the Fuinjutsu book that had been so fundamental in his studies. "Professor, thank you for lending me the book. I've studied it well and believe I could train on my own from now on, as the basics are learning calligraphy and some easy-to-execute seals." The professor, recognizing Minato's dedication and skill, responded with sincerity and a touch of pride. "That's good. I don't know if I will be that teacher next year, but if you need, you can come to look for me." With a "okay, thanks, Professor," Minato said goodbye and left the room to join his classmates. Shikako, Choza, Inoichi, and Suna were already gathered with others. Shikaku, always practical, murmured, "Let's go already, I want to sleep early today." Noticing Minato's arrival, They headed to the local steakhouse, a popular spot among Konoha's youth to celebrate special occasions. The atmosphere was light and full of laughter, a welcome contrast to the usual tension of ninja training and studies. He spent most of the time with Tsuna, sharing laughs, stories, and plans for the future. They talked animatedly, with Minato occasionally exchanging words and jokes with the rest of the group. It was an unusual scene in Minato's life since he dedicated most of his time to training, only exchanging conversations with Tsuna and Makoto. Choza, known for his insatiable appetite, was already eyeing the biggest piece of meat on the grill. His eyes gleamed as he reached out, but suddenly, he leaned a bit too far and almost fell from the chair. The whole table erupted in laughter. Choza, regaining his balance, said with an embarrassed smile, "I was just checking if the chair was sturdy." Shikaku, always the lazy one, just shook his head with a lazy smile. "Sure, Choza, you were testing the chair with your stomach." Inoichi, the most reserved of the group, watched the scene with a faint smile. Tsuna, not wanting to be left out, decided to further instigate the situation. With an outrageously animated expression, she exclaimed, "Choza, you should try balance jutsus instead of eating so much. Maybe you'll become Konoha's most agile ninja?" Tsuna's suggestion sparked another round of laughter and banter among the group. Choza, pretending to be offended, crossed his arms and grumbled something about appreciating the local cuisine. As the night progressed and 8 p.m. approached, the group acknowledged that it was time to head home. Each one said their goodbyes, promising to repeat the gathering next year, and departed for their respective homes. Minato, arriving later than usual at the orphanage, found Madame Garrigue waiting for him. With her arms crossed and an expression of mild reproach, she commented on his lateness, "You're late." Minato, aware that he had lingered longer than planned, smiled in an attempt to soften the situation. "Sorry, I was with some classmates." Madame Garrigue, though strict, said, "Be that as it may, go rest, since I know you'll just train while there are no classes." The next day, Minato began his holidays while some other children still had classes at the academy. He went to his training spot reflecting on his improvements this year. He continued to be the top of his class, got a job to afford some things he needed. In terms of strength, he greatly improved his physical body, despite having reached the limit of his development at that age. Minato started to study new areas to better his yields from this year. He refined even more his chakra control and completely mastered 3 shadow clones. Besides that, he is almost ready to master a new level of observation haki which increases his range and started learning Fuinjutsu thanks to his teacher. "It's a pity I still can't use my Pika Pika no Mi," Minato reflected as he arrived at his usual training spot. "But this year I will master it if my predictions are right. The war will start in the coming years, and I would have at most 2 years before becoming a genin," Minato reflected. "Then in this next year, I intend to quickly master the basic jutsus, focusing on my fruit and observation haki. In the coming years I plan to start studying the 6 styles to have a better chance of surviving the war." Minato did exactly that in the original, but I am not him, so my path is quite unpredictable, not to mention that I am being watched every week by someone, and I have no doubt that someone like Danzu would kill me if I represent a threat to him. So I must be discreet. Minato concluded, ready to start his training alone in that forest location. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released 1 day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.